Hey, welcome back to RTOD. I want to do a follow up, deeper dive, a rant video, if you will. If you looked at my last live stream, I was cataloging some of my records here, and I came across a couple interesting ones that you might have not seen before, and I want to give them a little bit more time because unless you were in broadcasting, specifically radio broadcasting, and specifically until the mid 90s, you might be unfamiliar with some of these things. So let's step back a little bit because what I found were interviews, asynchronous interviews, shows, as well as public service announcements. Now, let's talk about this a little bit because now on radio or television, the vast majority of the content those broadcasters get come from the internet, satellite feed. It's there instantaneously, and they can call it up at almost any given time. But there was a time where media had to be mailed to those stations. If you wanted a bunch of PSAs for your commercials, you had to get it in the mail. If you subscribed to a specific radio show, it had to come in the mail. And for the longest time, these came on records. Yeah, you could probably get them on reel to reel, compact disc, cassette, other formats later on. But for a long period of time, they were on records. And some of these records I used back when I was a DJ. One of them is the Frampton is Alive interview, where we did a fake, we'll call it, asynchronous interview with Peter Frampton. This record itself has side A and side B. One of it is the entire interview with the interviewee that you can just play, and the second one is Peter's answers only. To make it easy for the DJ, if you wanted to do an asynchronous interview, they have all of the questions here with lead-ins and lead-outs from Peter. Because when you do asynchronous interviews, it is very difficult to get the pacing just right. If you look at some of my previous interviews, especially my TechTV interviews that I have on the channel here, all of those were done asynchronous. I wasn't on Skype with Leo or Chris or Kat. I emailed them questions. They recorded themselves responding to the questions, and then I would record myself answering or asking the questions rather. And it was very difficult to get the pacing, and it's something that I haven't done in years. So it's a little rough. We'll have links for those below. But I will also have a link to this entire interview, not the one I give, in case you want to check it out. But if we rewind back to when I was doing a DJ and I wanted to do a spoof interview with Peter Frampton, it might have sounded something like this.
The biggest hits, non-stop, 24/7.
All right, welcome back to WRTOD, and today we have a wonderful guest inside the studio out promoting his newest album, Peter Frampton. So, Peter, thanks for joining us. Now, you've always made records going all the way back to Humble Pie, Frampton's Camel, and of course your celebrated solo albums, all of them on a single record company. And now, after all these years, you're going on another label, going on Atlantic Records. I'm wondering whether that kind of switch gives an artist a psychological lift, the kind when people might move into a new house or change jobs.
Well, I think that not only being with a new record label, taking some time off and sorting everything out, it's great because everything is new. There's new record label who seem very excited, which is obviously pleasing. New management, Tony Smith. Let's see, what else? I've got new publishing companies and new guitars, everything, so everything's brand new.
A lot of these interviews were time sensitive. This one here with Peter Frampton, he was specifically teasing a new album coming up. So when this would have been sent out to studios, there would have been a window that you would had to have played it. Other ones, like the Warner Brothers music show here, yeah, this came out in 1986, January, but it really didn't say when to play this. Now, there might have been supplemental documentation with it, but sometimes you'll get some radio shows that are just evergreen content. You can play it almost any time. And this specific one, we could probably get away playing today because the music's still relevant. Yeah, it's 80s, but it's classic. But some of the banter on there, it just makes sense. It's a good evergreen content. Other things, though, like this rock album countdown for the weekend of February 22nd, 1985 by Westwood One, only could be played that weekend of February 22nd, 1985. Some cases like this, they had to be returned to the distribution center. Some places destroyed them, or other places, like the station I got this from, just kind of put it in a closet for 30 years and forgot about it. What's great about this, and what I truly love about radio shows that you can get on records, is you just put it on and forget about it because you have the fun DJ banter, you have the songs, and there's a lot of good stuff on here, but you also have commercials too.
Westwood One presents the Rock Album Countdown, brought to you by Budweiser, the king of beers. For all you do, this Bud's for you.
And I'm not going to play the song because I don't want to get a copyright hit, but Turn Up the Radio, Autograph, George Thurgood. This is all handwritten by somebody else, so I'm having some difficulty with some of it. But Deep Purple, REO Speedwagon, Journey, Foreigner. There's an interview with Foreigner. Music News from London. So Music News from London for 1985. Like, this is good. There's a lot of good stuff in this album, and I really wish that I could share some of this with you, but I don't want to get the copyright hit on it. Other evergreen content is stuff like the Columbia Jazz Masterpiece radio show. This was by CBS and hosted by Dave Brubeck. This is really good, and honestly, this is one of my favorites. I have about 8 of these albums, but right here I have, what is this? Volume 4, 5, and 6. And it's just 30 minutes of jazz and talking about jazz. We open up here with conversations about Duke Ellington. Now, this is great. This is just one of the things that you can put on the record, get a nice drink, just sit back, relax.
For over 60 years, Columbia Records has been at the forefront of America's original art form, jazz. Today, with the technical advancements of digital audio, we can enjoy these classic recordings like never before. And in the next hour, you'll hear the legends of jazz on the Columbia Jazz Masterpiece series. This is Dave Brubeck, and we'll return right after this.
Sometimes you'll find really great radio sampler albums. These could be sent out as promotional items to stations. Sometimes even music stores would get these to hand out to people. This particular one by Styx is really great because it has 2 records on it. Sides 1 through 3 are just music, a really good pick. Renegade, Crystal Ball, Too Much Time in My Hands, Blue Collar Man, Come Sail Away, and The Best of Times. That alone would make this a really good record and something you'd play a lot. But side 4 is just interviews with all the band members. So pretty desirable in my mind. The resale value on this isn't as high, but you know what? I don't collect my records just to collect them. I collect them to listen to them, and that Styx album is something I really like to listen to. Other things you might find are other radio series similar to the Warner Brothers radio show, but not. This is the American Museum of Natural History 1985 Spring Radio Series with great tracks such as The Ox Has Its Year, Animals in Motion, The World of Bees, and my favorite, Jade, It's Not Always Green.
With me today is Dr. George E. Harlow, Associate Curator in the Department of Mineral Sciences at the museum. George is a mineralogist, and one thing George knows is that all that's green is not jade. Am I right, George?
That's quite right, Tom.
This caters to a very specific audience. Probably played on some NPR station somewhere. There's 13 tracks, and each are about 3 minutes. It would be a really good bumper for an NPR station or maybe a small radio station that wanted to fill up some time with the American Museum of Natural History. The station I got this from labeled this as propaganda. Apparently they didn't care too much about Sea Survivor, the Nautilus. The last one I want to feature is special for me, not because I'm a veteran and I use the VA, but because you don't see a lot of commercial albums. And when I say commercial, I mean commercials, like we're trying to sell you something, or public service announcements. This is the Veterans Administration public service announcement record that goes over 6 different formats. Now, warn you here, it was dated. This was from the early 80s. So we have MOR formats, or middle of the road, country formats, rock formats, easy listening formats, what we would call today as R&B, but it was specifically on this here as black formats, and for Spanish formats. Each of these 6 selections kind of tell the same thing. What does the VA do for families, maybe alcohol abuse, counseling, use with their GI Bill? And it formats each of those commercials for the station format. So there's a big change when you go from middle of the road formats to the country formats. The background music change, the accent changes. It's really to drive home for that specific audience.
Come and listen to what we have to say. We're the Veterans Administration. Yes, that's VA.
This one in particular I also like because the VA thought it was very nice of them to take an excerpt of a McGraw-Hill book company telling how to do live effects. And well, you got to think about it because it's a VA record for commercials that only the DJ's going to see. Let's give them something else here. But this is an excerpt from a 1937 publishing that tells you how to do audio effects for radio. So, for example, let's say I wanted to shoot a bow and arrow and have that arrow through the air. I could whip a reed or a long, thin stick through the air. What else we got here? What if I want to do an explosion? Now, mind you, today I could just go to Google, YouTube, anywhere and find a lot of these sound effects. But there was a period of time, even up to the 70s or 80s, that if you wanted sound effects in a radio station, in a show, whether it was your morning talk show or a radio show, typically you had to make them yourself. You had to make them live, or you would have a scratch tape of some of the pre-recorded effects. So if we wanted to do an explosion, use an inflated basketball bladder with 15 to 20 BB shots in it. Get an old type of bladder that does not have a valve. Holding the bladder about 3 inches from the mic, suddenly give it an upward jerk or hit the bladder soundly upon something near the microphone and hold it up to the microphone so that the reverberations will be heard for some time. Okay, maybe that'll work. I don't know. But I'll play some of these as we end. I'm going to wrap this up here. I mean, this is exciting for me, and it might be enjoyable for you, but some of these things I just can't play because I don't want to get copyright strikes. And I'm not just going to recite the Spring Radio series from the American Museum of Natural History. But really where I want to go with this is if you're out at a flea market, a record store, just anywhere, and you see records, flip through them. If you find some of these, hold on to them. And I truly mean that because especially some of the ones of the radio shows, this one here probably could have been destroyed the weekend after February 22nd of 1985 or returned to the distribution center. I don't know why it still existed, but I have it and I enjoy it. And there's other ones floating out there, and I really hope that you have the chance to pick some of them up and enjoy them like I do.
Now that you have served your nation, we extend this invitation. Can we serve you at your VA?
The Veterans Administration is always ready to serve the families of veterans, but you can help us help you. Claims for compensation, pensions, education, and home loans all require identifying information and specific documents. Veterans who previously filed a claim were given a VA claim number. If you know that number, your claim for benefits can be processed faster. If you don't know that number, or if you've never filed a claim before, contact the nearest Veterans Administration office, and we'll tell you what information you need to process your claim. Providing benefits to veterans' families, another part of VA's half-century of service to veterans.
The Veterans Administration, proud to serve you now.
The Veterans Administration has education assistance available to eligible vets who need to complete high school, take refresher courses, or pass an exam to qualify for higher education. And veterans will still be able to use their full GI Bill eligibility for college or training, helping vets complete their education. Another part of VA's half-century of service to veterans.
Oh, it's your day at VA. We've got something to say at VA. It's your day at VA. Atención, es la voz de la administración de veteranos.
Veterano hispano.
Atención, atención.
La Administración de Veteranos presta asistencia educativa para completar los estudios secundarios, tomar cursos de actualización o rendir examen de ingreso para estudios avanzados. Además, los veteranos elegibles conservan los beneficios educacionales en capacitación o cursos secundarios. La Administración de Veteranos, 50 años a su servicio.